Reggie Bush on how Drew Brees and the New Orleans Saints were able to contend for a Super Bowl. The great Reggie Bush, in my opinion, the greatest college football player I ever saw. Unbelievable his time at USC. I mean, he was a couple years too early. He really was. If he would be playing in today's NFL, he'd probably be the best running back in the league. He was just too early to where running backs were expected to just run between the tackles. They weren't expected to catch the ball. They weren't expected to be... I mean, Reggie Bush could have been the greatest version of Le'Veon Bell ever. Like, Le'Veon Bell kind of changed the game when it came to that. He kind of ushered in this new era in the NFL. Like, oh, wow, we can put a receiver in the slot. A receiver can be just as much, or a running back can be just as much of a receiver. Reggie Bush could have done that. You know, Reggie Bush was so much more talented. I mean, the fact that they didn't let him return kicks and punts, like they were hesitant to, he was just such a dynamic player. And he actually kind of had a decent career, overall. I mean, nothing Hall of Fame worthy, but he certainly was not a bust. He didn't live up to the hype he could have, I guess, but the game also wasn't ready for him. He's one of the rare players where he'd be much better in today's game than before. But let's hear what he has to say about Drew Brees and his time in New Orleans.
It was mainly Drew that I watched. I really focused in on Drew, right? I watched the other guys, but Drew was the guy I was like, nah, he the captain of the ship. He's the guy. He's the guy that I want to try to emulate the way I come to work. You know what I'm saying? And so I never beat him, though. I never beat him into the facility. He was always later than me off the field. You know what
I mean, there's no doubt about that. Like, Drew Brees, for as good as he was, as far as like being a pro, just being good, like just being a pro quarterback, Hall of Famer, top, in my opinion, second best quarterback to ever live. On top of that, you can't deny Drew Brees is a leader of men. He's got that part down. And you always hear about quarterbacks who struggle with that part, or, maybe that part's not as great. They're not the locker room leader. They're not the team captain. Maybe the team doesn't believe in them. Drew Brees has never had that problem. Drew Brees is the captain of the ship, like Reggie just said. He seems like just an amazing person on and off the field. So, I mean, what a guy, what a stand-up guy, what a quarterback, what a talisman of a team for an NFL franchise.
I'm saying? It was just, relentless work, relentless pursuit. And long after I left, he never wavered.
Never stopped.
Until after I was long retired from the game, and he was still playing.
You see, you know what that does right there? That's what a lot of guys that play that position.
Yeah.
Because I was around a guy the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, a lot of guys that play that position, you got to hear that everyone is looking at you.
Yeah, I mean, that's the hard part. We always talk about college quarterbacks coming in and the difference of being in college and the pros or whatever. When you are a franchise quarterback, when you are supposed to be the guy, the whole team is looking at you. The whole team is looking at what you're doing. And if you're not ready to assume that role, then it really doesn't matter what you do on the field. You will always be lacking a little bit. You will always be lacking when it comes to the actual job. I mean, being a starting quarterback in the NFL is about as hard of a job as it gets because of all the stuff you have to do aside from your actual position. Aside from trying to be good at the hardest position in sports or the most pressure-packed position in sports, you also have to be a diplomat. You also have to be the hardest worker. You have to be okay with the most pressure. You have to be able to talk to your teammates and get your teammates motivated when they need to. It is such a unique position in sports.
And so what you put yourself out there to be on the field, off the field, whatever, they're looking at that.
Absolutely.
And the professional that Drew was, that motivates guys to fall in line because he's the highest paid guy in the team. He's been there. He's got this. He's got all these, so you have to. So that's a big thing to have that example from the quarterback position. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because who we kidding? This is a fucking quarterback league.
It really is.
Yeah,
if you don't have a quarterback,
has been for a long time.
And there's so many different size, shape, how you play. But if you don't have your guy, and if he's not the right guy, and he's not putting in and showing the guys how it needs to be done, I mean, you're light years ahead. I know that's such a famous thing that everyone wants to say. Buzz light years behind.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing is that, like you said, the rest of the team will follow suit. You know what I'm saying? And when you set that culture, from day one, the first time you step foot, in that uniform. So this was my rookie year was Drew's first year in New Orleans. And it was also Sean.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think about it too. Like that year, I think the Saints won 10 games, right? But they went to the NFC title game. Like, Drew Brees was immediate. That was an immediate culture changer. And you could say, like, is it fair that the quarterback has to do that? Is it fair the quarterback has to be the first one there, last one to leave, has to be the most vocal, has to be the hardest worker, has to do all that stuff? No, it probably isn't fair, but that's just how it is. That's just how the best do it. That's how the best rise to that occasion. When you look at Brees and Brady and Peyton Manning and all those guys, like, they're the same exact style of guy where they're the hardest worker, they're the face of the franchise, they're the diplomat, they're somehow the gym warrior, but they're also the president. Like, they're a combination. They're almost like an astronaut, where you have to be a combination of a lot of different things. Oh, and you have to be technically great at your job. You have to be technically great at playing the role of quarterback, because if you're not good at that, then all those words and all the hard work and all of that will just fall short, and it'll look disingenuous.
Sean Payton's rookie year as a head coach.
Yeah.
And so we had a lot of unknown, right? We had some great players, but they were still unknown because the year before
the
Saints were the Aints.
Yeah.
And they weren't great. They weren't good. Obviously, weren't going to
second overall pick.
Affected a lot of that. But the years prior before that, they were one of the worst teams in the league for a very long time. And so it started with Drew, changing the culture, and Sean and me. And so, taking that team and changing the culture to being a respected organization.
And I'll say this about Reggie. Like, I obviously don't know. I wasn't in the locker room. But Reggie, even though he wasn't as good of a player as he was at USC, Reggie was the embodiment of a winner, the embodiment of a hard worker, the embodiment of all of that. So he probably was the perfect guy to come in there and fit that new culture. He's the highlight draft pick. He's a Heisman winner, national championship winner. He comes into that culture. Drew Brees and Sean Payton are trying to create something. Reggie probably just fed off that. Reggie is the kind of player that would have been perfect for. Even though the statistics weren't there, even though the same player wasn't there, he fit that mold. And he probably did help build the culture.
Respected winning organization, was just...
I mean, that's the crazy thing. It's because of you guys' success that we still think that the Saints are still going to be good right now.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, we fail to forget they don't have Drew Brees, they ain't got Reggie Bush, and they don't got...
Well, it's the same with the Patriots, right? I guess the Patriots still had Belichick going into last year, but the Saints, the Aints is definitely a thing, no doubt. The Saints were one of the worst franchises in the NFL for a long time, no doubt about it, right? But then they had 15 years of straight up, I don't want to say dominance, but pretty damn close. They were one of the 5 most winningest franchises in the NFL since Drew Brees and Sean Payton got there. So whatever that is, 15 years, 16 years, whatever the time crunch is. They were always good, always relevant, multiple conference championship games, went to a Super Bowl, high scoring, always good on offense. They always did, even the years they were 7-9, even the years they didn't have a great record, they were still dangerous. They were still a relevant team. So the Saints cultural shift is something very rare to see in sports, where you have a franchise go from being a complete laughingstock to the premier franchise. The Saints were one of the 3 or 4 premier franchises for almost 2 decades.
Sean Payton.
Oh, they're going to bomb it to Marquise Colston. They'll be good.
I mean, it's...
Exactly, but that's, I think you've done this in New England, so you understand it, man. But again, the optics of everything you do, how you work, how you prepare, how you engage with your teammates, the kind of player you are on a football field, the unselfishness of your play and of your work ethic each and every day, it all matters.
It does.
Every single bit of it matters. And that's why the ones who prepare the best and the most, Patriots, that's why you guys are considered one of the best teams, the best team ever. You had the greatest quarterback ever, man, because preparation.
But it's the same thing with Brady. Like, Brady probably dragged that standard up, the culture he set. We've all seen Brady, how he is, how he prepares, how he holds himself, how he is at practice. He's not afraid to get the team going. He's not afraid to get in someone's face, but he's also not afraid to motivate them. We saw Michael Jordan very similar. We've seen his practices where he was punching teammates in the face. He was demanding greatness at practice. Kobe Bryant, same thing, demanding, holding the standard up. When you have someone at that level who's holding the entire team accountable at the highest possible standards, they all do the same thing. That's what I'm saying. Across sports, it's the same type of talisman. the same type of captain seems to rise the rest or bring the rest of the team up. Whether it's Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, whoever it is, they all seem to do the same thing.
Preparation is key, and it's the number one thing. It takes over anything.
And that's kind of how it goes. I'm sure Sean set the template of what we expect.
Yeah.
And you got a guy like Drew who polices and enforces.
Yeah.
And is the flag carrier.
And is the evidence. I mean, that's the whole thing. Like, Peyton puts out the culture, and then you have the captain who now has to set the example. He has to say, okay, this is our identity set by the coach. This is how we're going to act as players. And then you watch Drew Brees get in there at 5 a.m., leave at 7 p.m., the hard work he's putting in, the prep he's putting in, the excellence that he's demanding. You see that, and then you as a player, you're like, well, I know what I have to do. I see now what I have to do because I'm watching Drew Brees do it. So I have to, if he's going to do that, then I know what's expected of me.
And then you got foot soldier Reggie. You know, you got your leaders, but it has to be the quarter, which was kind of like how we were.
Exactly.
Bill had an expectation. Tom, followed that and like was the guy who was fucking showing everyone how to do it. And then you had the guys under him that had to keep the hurdle in.
There you go. Boom. So this is Julian Edelman's podcast, I guess. Yeah. Games with Names. Interesting podcast name. Very nice stuff. Good. It's always good to hear from that era of the Saints because it was just such a whirlwind, such an absolute, what a team, what it did for a city, how it completely changed the franchise. Like, I mean, and Edelman's right. Like, the ripple effect is still here. People still look at the Saints as a team that should be good on offense, or a team that should be good just in general, or a team that's irrelevant. It's unbelievable. In the face of Katrina and in the face of the natural disasters and what was going on in New Orleans, the fact that team could come together at that time and not just be a good story for a couple of years, but I mean, like, you look at a team like the Seattle Seahawks, that whole era, they changed the culture, they changed that team, but then it kind of faded. We're talking about 15 plus years of that kind of impact. I mean, that's crazy. Unbelievable. So what a testament to those guys. But great interview, or a great little highlight from Reggie. Man, I really wish Reggie, he's the one guy. He's the one player I wish I could see now. Like, I wish I could see what he would look like in today's game. Because, man, he just fits it so perfect. I remember in the pros, they tried to turn him into just a run in between the tackles kind of player. And it just weren't utilizing Reggie how he should have been utilized. I mean, he could have been. I mean, if you want to get lost down a rabbit hole, I'm telling you, go look at some Reggie Bush highlights from college. Just absolutely insane what he was doing at USC. Again, for my money, the best college football player I've ever seen was Reggie Bush. I mean, just complete superstar. Complete superstar. Thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen. Go down in the comments below. Let me know what you think about this video, and I will see you in the next video.